Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Breast Cancer Now's Facebook Live this evening. I'm Catherine, one of the clinical nurse specialists, and I'm going to be joined by, I'm already joined by Katie, one of my colleagues. So we're from Breast Cancer Now, as I say, we're the research and support charity. So lots of information, lots of support, and certainly lots of research going on about our topic tonight, which is secondary breast cancer focused. Lots of research in that area, but we really want to concentrate this evening on living well with secondary breast cancer when you've got a diagnosis of secondary breast cancer. So now's your opportunity to ask us questions. We haven't had loads of questions in, have we, Katie? But
no.
We thought we might try and start and talk about the types of things that people think about and ask us about on our helpline, which is open every day, as hopefully you know, apart from Sunday, about living well and the types of things that come up for people when they're wanting to get on with their lives alongside living with that diagnosis of secondary breast cancer. So first of all, just to describe that secondary breast cancer is breast cancer has started in the breast, but it has gone beyond the breast and the lymph nodes underneath the arm. So it's typically gone to other organs such as the lungs and the bones and the liver and maybe the brain as well. Do remember that this is a public forum, so if you're going to ask us questions, other people will be able to see that. There is the opportunity for you to contact us via social media, our helpline, our Ask Our Nurses service, to ask us private questions so that you can get an answer, but you might not want to ask us those sorts of things today. So just to remind you about that. And also a reminder about a survey that we'll pop the link into underneath the chat here. So that you can give us your feedback on these sessions and also give us some ideas of what other things you might want us to cover. So that's a quick introduction. So good evening, Katie. Sorry, I didn't say good evening properly. It's a warm one again tonight. Thank you everybody for joining us instead of sitting out in your gardens, or maybe you are sitting out in your garden and you are watching us as well, because that's about sort of being outside in nature is part of living well. But the sorts of things that come up on our helpline, Katie, what would you say? In the time that you've been with us and working on the helpline, what would you say the sorts of things typically come up in when people are asking about this?
So I think there's a real mixture. We get a real mixture of questions on the helpline. I definitely think there is a lot more interest in wellbeing and how people can look after themselves and live with the diagnosis, because we know that people are living longer even with a secondary breast cancer diagnosis, and so people are wanting to know, as you say, the things that can help them and that they can control and make a difference in their health and well-being. As you mentioned, things around diet. So I think diet's a big one. There's lots of misinformation out there. And people are often worried that they're going to feed the cancer, make the cancer worse. So that's a lot that we hear. So we could talk about that, I think, to start with.
I think you're right. Just going back to the control thing, then quite often we talk about self-advocacy, and I was at a really great patient conference last week where people were talking about being a self-advocate and not really feeling as if they had to be, and that's absolutely right, that information and support should be available and shouldn't necessarily have to ask for it. But actually, if you think about the things that you can control, diet, exercise, all the things we might come on to, then that can be helpful, and it can be a really positive experience if you go looking for the things that are going to help you live well, and like you say, improve your health and well-being, be that physical or psychological. So diet comes up loads. It's confusing. What would we say to people about diet?
Well, I think it's really difficult because, as you say, we know that in the NHS, the teams are very strapped for time, and so there isn't always a huge amount of information given about these things that can really make a difference. So I think that generally, there isn't a specific diet to follow. There isn't foods that you can't eat. There's nothing that's going to make things worse. Generally speaking, it's about having a varied diet, as we all should be having anyway. So
definitely.
Your 5 a day and plenty of protein, all of those sorts of things. In addition to that, people often think about supplements and whether they should be taking supplements to support their diet as well. And again, it's a question that comes up lots and completely understandable. particularly when we know that people living with secondary breast cancer can struggle with appetite as well and taste changes and things like that as a result of their treatment. So they are looking at ways that they can support their diet. So as I say, general advice is nothing specific, just try and eat a good mixture. And there is some info on our website, which we can pop a link to in the chat for that. The World Cancer Research Fund is a really, really great resource as well. So we signpost them quite a lot on the helpline, don't we, Catherine?
Yeah, they've got a nutrition and cancer helpline. It's not open every day or regularly in the same way as ours, but if you have a look on there, we'll post a link to theirs. And we're doing quite a bit of signposting to them. So they will talk to you about diet, and they will talk to you about nutrition, and also about supplements. We get loads and loads of questions about supplements, but it's always really important to ask your team about the supplements. We often think about supplements, herbal products, vitamins, for instance, as being healthy because they're natural, as it were. But we know that some of those things can interact with some of the drugs that people have for breast cancer and for secondary breast cancer particularly. Some of those definitely do have interactions. So it's really important to ask the team about that. Most things will probably be absolutely fine with the oncologist, and they won't have a need to be able to say, no, you must stay clear of that. But there will be those things. The problem with the evidence, and we're in a world where we use medical evidence to be able to support decision making and treatment decisions, is that for a lot of those things we can't say that they're totally safe in the same way as we can't say that they're totally unsafe as well. So there is a lot of confusion, and I think it is a bit frustrating for people when they get that sort of information. But a chat through with your oncologist, and also for your pharmacist. Pharmacist is brilliant at really knowing about what may go along with and be okay to take with treatment as well. So
and I think going back to the the loss of appetite, taste changes, that can be really, really challenging as well, to find things that you actually want to eat. And because food when we're well is obviously about feeding our body, but it's also about enjoyment, and it's really hard. I think when you lose that, and it's a big social thing as well. So again, as you say, chatting to the teams will often have a dietitian linked with the hospital. But if not, as Catherine said, the World Cancer Research Fund have got loads of information, but also their helpline with dietitians. So they may well be able to sort of talk you through some additional supportive measures that can really help as well. So definitely worth reaching out there to them.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely worth reaching out to them. And I was going to say something else, and it's gone completely out of my mind. I'm sure I will come back to that. But yeah, they are a really good resource, and we're doing an awful lot of signposting to them, aren't we, with regards to that. If you do need sort of dietary support with regards to not being able to eat and needing to get more calories in, then there is information on our website. There's information on Macmillan's got good information. But we've also, that was it, the videos that we've done. So one of our colleagues did a set of videos, and there is one specifically for secondary breast cancer on our website with Rachel, who's a dietitian. So that's worth a watch as well. So and as you said, sort of coupled with that is exercise. That's the other one that typically comes to mind when we're thinking about living well and health and well-being. And there is a question already from Julie. So I know exercise is meant to help, but I'm very big. I'm often really tired, and my bone mets make me ache. I'm also worried about what exercise is safe with my bone mets. Any ideas? That's a really good question, Julie, and it's one that comes up an awful lot. Do you want to talk about that? Yeah, Katie?
Yeah, so it's really tricky, Julie, and we often hear this. It's kind of like that catch-22. You kind of know what's good for you and what you should be doing, but often don't feel up to it. And I think a lot of it is around starting small. So we often think you've got to sort of, do a big walk, or, start doing something more vigorous.
Join actually, the gym, or that sort of thing.
Exercise can be really simple. I think it's challenging with bone mets, particularly if you're achy. And it may be worth, having a chat with your team to see if some of your symptoms can be optimized, because their bone mats can be painful, it can be achy, and sometimes, having some medication to help with that if you're not already on anything can be really helpful. So do have a chat with them, and they'll be able to sort of assess you and be a bit more specific with trying to help with the pain. Fatigue as well is quite a hard one, because you don't have that same motivation to do things, but we do know that exercise can help with fatigue, and can help with that kind of motivation as well. But again, starting small. With regards to being wary about what exercise is safe, that's a really good question, and you're right to sort of want to understand and be, cautious about that. Again, we would suggest having a chat with your team, because you can exercise with bone mets, but the advice varies person to person, and it's very much dependent on where the bone mets are and whether it's affecting, for instance, your spine or any of your joints, or the bones in your upper legs, things like that. So there are certain precautions that may need to be taken, but it's very specific.
So lower impact, not necessarily high impact. And that type of thing. And like you say, starting low and slow, and particularly we need to obviously caution people about sort of if they've got mets in their spine, about sort of twisting and things. Exactly. You can do exercise. I know that there's an awful lot of talk, and there was at the patient conference that I went to last week with regards to resistance training. So obviously that means that you don't need to go out. You can use some small weights, you can use a couple of cans and get in that type of thing. But we've got, I don't know whether anybody knows about our Speakers Live sessions that we have. So part of our Living with Secondary Breast Cancer service has Speakers Lives, which will deliver a lot of information about a specific topic, and we usually get an expert in to deliver those. So we got Caroline Tweedy coming along, haven't we, at the beginning of July. She's incredibly motivating, and Julie, I would suggest if you wanted to sort of join that, then register for that. We'll find the pop the link on for signing up to that, and even if you sign up but you can't attend, you miss it, then they will send you the link to the recording. Obviously the benefit of joining live is asking her questions, and asking questions in the same way that you've asked us. But I think as a starting point, like you've said, going back to your team, there's a couple of resources that come to mind. I don't know whether you've got any noted down with regards to exercise, but the ones that come to mind, there is Macmillan did a booklet on exercise and bone mets. And there's also a link that I know I've come across before, which I think is from across the pond. I want to say Canada, but I might be wrong. But there's also a bone mets sort of an exercise website as well. So if you saw me scribbling just there, that's to remind me to make sure that we pop that in the chat as well.
I was just thinking about Make Seconds Count as well. You mentioned the summit that you went to. If you again, we can pop the link in, but if you have a Google of Make Seconds Count, they're a charity specifically for people living with secondary breast cancer, but they offer some online exercise, so some yoga, Pilates, things like that, and obviously it's all for people with secondary breast cancer. So that would be a really great place for you to start if you're feeling a little bit uncertain. You can reach out to them. Penny Braun as well also do some online exercise classes, again all for people living with cancer. So another safe place to look and make a start. And I think it is often about checking out with your team the things that we've mentioned, Julie, but then just kind of getting started and seeing how you go, starting slowly, building it up. But appreciate it's really tough.
Yeah, it is. What else can you think of that comes along as sort of living well? I mean, the one that comes to us quite a bit, really, because definitely maybe a little bit more often these days, but as you say, this time is precious in the NHS, and sometimes these things don't necessarily get mentioned or in-depth conversations, but sex and intimacy is one as well. That is part of our our whole being, our well-being, and something that an awful lot of people enjoy with a partner, whoever that partner is, an intimate partner. So, and we know that an awful lot of the treatments that are used in breast cancer, but secondary breast cancer as well, particularly the hormone treatments, can give people, excuse me, A lot of issues with menopausal symptoms, but
Yeah.
loss of sexual desire, vaginal dryness, that type of thing. So we do get quite a few questions about that,
We
don't we, through
definitely
both the Ask
do.
Our Nurses
Yeah.
service and the helpline.
Yeah, and it's definitely not discussed much in the NHS, as you say. I think partly because of time, but partly just because it's seen as maybe not important. But actually, from a lot of the events that we run and the calls that we get, it's a really important part. And there are resources out there for sure. And as you say, I think some of the resources to support managing menopausal symptoms can be really, really helpful. We have got a page around intimate relationships and breast cancer as well, with some signposting, which you may find helpful. And there are specialists out there that have a special interest in menopause and cancer specifically, and sex and intimacy and cancer. So again, if you do a bit of Googling, there are specialists out there that that can help. I think the other thing is it's always worth speaking to your team and your GP as well, because as I say, unless they are aware that you're struggling with these things, they can't help. And there is help out there, and sometimes it's having that initial conversation. We're often a bit embarrassed, I think, when it comes to sort of sex and intimacy.
There's some really good people out there on, in the world of social media. And I know we have to sort of always be careful and say to people, be careful where you get your information from. But there are good people out there. So we'll pop some links in there as well. We certainly have some great speakers that come, a great speaker that comes along to our Younger Women with Secondaries Together event. So the next one of those will be in October. But really good speakers and really good information and support around that, and feedback that actually does make such a difference to people's lives. So I suppose the bottom line is, don't be afraid of asking your team or your GP about this. It might be that the GP directs you back to your treatment team, because they know what can be used and what is safe to use alongside hormonal sort of vaginal estrogen, that type of thing, and loads of discussion about that as to whether it's safe, what it's not safe, whether it's not safe. So your treatment team will tell you whether they're happy for you to use that type of thing. But even without that, then vaginal moisturisers as well as lubricants, all sorts of information that is out there. And we've definitely had Facebook Lives on sex and intimacy before. So if you can look at our YouTube channel, we've now got a section in there that is called Breast Cancer Chats. And we're nice and up to date on there, so have a good search through there. There will be two or three on there, I think, about sex and intimacy, and you can have a look for that. It's on the helpline and have a chat about that. But definitely directing you back to your team, or if you're lucky enough to have a specialist nurse that you can link to, they're a good starting point, and they can often refer you as well. I
was just thinking as well, Catherine, sometimes it's obviously the physical impact, but sometimes there's that emotional impact as well, and that change in relationship with a partner. So often when someone's diagnosed with secondary breast cancer, you almost develop sort of more of a carer's relationship rather than that traditional husband and wife relationship, and that can really impact things. So it's seeking that sort of psychological, emotional support as well is really important. And places like local hospices can be really helpful with that. So they'll often have counsellors that can support with, the more emotional side of things. Hospital teams will sometimes have psychologists that they work with as well. So, sex and intimacy isn't just the physical; it's that emotional side of things as well.
Okay, and it's sort of alongside that, I was sort of, we mentioned vaginal dryness and sex and intimacy, but alongside that, is a raft of menopausal symptoms, particularly if people are on hormone therapies. Even if they've not got bone mets, they may well notice that those hormone therapies, because of the lowering of estrogen, does give them aches and pains in their joints. Hot flushes is absolutely top of the list for people that are trying to manage those and live, because for the majority of people with secondary breast cancer, they want to remain on their treatment. They don't want things to change, if it's keeping the cancer under control or making it diminish in any way. So that can be a real struggle. So it's really important to tell your teams and to let people know that you've got side effects, so they've got an opportunity to help you. We've got a good booklet on managing menopausal symptoms and when you've got breast cancer, which is a generic booklet. It applies to both early breast cancer and secondary breast cancer as well, and lots of opportunity for you to get hold of us and have a talk through your menopausal symptoms as well, whatever they may be. Other things, sort of think about memory, cognitive impairment, all the things that a lot of women do experience in the natural menopause, but quite often you're pushed into menopause, into sort of an early menopause if you're younger, or suddenly there is this depletion of estrogen, and people really do notice it quite heavily and quite quickly when they're having these. So please do speak to your team, but if you want to ring us or you want to message us about that, then you can do as well. And alongside that, you did mention intimate relationships, but relationships generally, we speak to quite a few people that it makes a difference when they've got open communication with their partner, with their family, whoever that is, or those closest to them, with regards to talking about how they're feeling and how those around them are feeling as well. It is a ripple effect, and the harmonious sort of, if you can have that, relationships makes a massive difference to being able to live and carry on and enjoy things as a couple, as a family, as a single, whoever you are and whatever's happening, then that does make a difference as well. So relationships is another thing that we do have speakers lives on, or it comes up at the younger women with secondaries together as well, talking about relationships and managing and communicating in a relationship as well. So definitely has an impact on living well with secondary breast cancer. What about the other practical sort of things? I don't know what you thought about the practical side of things.
Well, I was just thinking about holidays. So that comes up quite a lot through the helpline. People unsure whether they are okay to go on a holiday, questions around, travel insurance and things like that. So obviously, secondary breast cancer treatment is very variable. So some people will be on, a treatment where they're just taking a tablet each day and actually, are feeling really, really well, and want to consider going away. For other people, you may be on treatment that's involves having to go to the hospital, every 3 weeks or whatever it might be. So, it can vary, and I think it's again, we keep saying it, don't we? It's important to have a chat with your team, because even if you're on a treatment that involves you having to go to the hospital regularly, they can often work around things if you want to go away and have a break, because we know that looking after your health and well-being is really, really important. And it may be that a holiday does you the world of good. So
it does. Does everybody good if you can get on one? It does.
Yeah, it's true. So don't think that you can't. Do speak to your team, and sometimes they'll be very happy for you to take a short pause in your treatment, again, to do something that you really want to do, enjoy, and then come back and restart. For other treatments, you can just continue whilst you're away as well. So again, that's a bit variable, but I think travel insurance is a big one people worry about, Catherine, isn't it?
It is, and we've done a couple of Facebook lives in the past, so there'll be one on that YouTube chat, the breast cancer chats. I think I did it a little bit earlier this year.
April, I think it was, wasn't it?
Fiona McRae, who is from Insurance With. I mean, they're a company, so we're not supposed to recommend them. So there are other insurance companies out there, but I think their other website is Travel Insurance Explained. So if you want to Google that, everybody, or you want to, you follow the link that we will pop up there as well. But yeah, a lot of people with secondary breast cancer want to and do travel despite their diagnosis, and they want to make the most most of, every day and not give up their holidays. Or sometimes people decide that they are going to do that big holiday. Fiona had some amazing tips with regards to travel, maybe thinking about where you go, when you go, the types of information that is needed, a fit to fly letter, making sure that you've got all the treatment that you need to take with you, making sure that if you're on pain meds, that, if they're not controlled drugs here, maybe they might be in another country. So where you're going to get any healthcare assistance if you need to. Loads and loads of really good tips in that Facebook Live. So I can't sort of stress that enough, really. It was a great live that she gave us an awful lot of information in, because we want to make sure that people can enjoy, doing what they've done, or even doing different things, and getting out there and seeing places that were always on their bucket list but are brought to their forefront of their mind because of their diagnosis. So definitely holidays.
We have got a page, haven't we, on our website as well around travel with breast cancer. So there'll be some links on there that, if you're a bit stuck, loads of information on there which we can pop in. But really important. But lots to think about, and I think it can probably feel quite overwhelming, I would imagine. It can be quite overwhelming arranging a holiday anyway, can't it, with lots to think about. But when you've got the added pressure, as you say, of treatments and medications, and what if I become unwell, all those things, it's a lot. And I think, the more prepared you can be, the better. But it's a great Facebook Live, a great resource. So
And I suppose the flip side to the holiday bit is work. When you have your holiday from work. So a lot of people with a secondary breast cancer diagnosis are still working. They're still contributing to the company that they work for, or the NHS, or teaching, or whatever that is. But quite a few people do ask us about support for work, don't they? And we often signpost them. There's good information about, I think, work on Macmillan's website still, but also we often signpost to things like working with cancer, the organisation. Their services aren't all totally free, but they've got some really good resources on there, and I've heard really good comments about people being supported by them. But reasonable adjustments and things like that we get asked about, don't we? And just how to go about returning to work maybe after that initial phase of starting treatment.
And again, quite variable depending on what sort of job you do, because obviously, if it's something more physical, potentially it may be more challenging for you. So I think it's good to try and have a sort of honest discussion with your employer around your diagnosis and how you're feeling physically, and how life is for you at that point in time. And I think you mentioned working with cancer, they've got lots of information to support employers as well. So if you are finding it hard to have those discussions, or you feel like they need a bit more support, then again, it's a really good resource for employers as well, and it can kind of help bridge that gap and help with that communication as well, because that can be really difficult. But you're right, lots of people continue working whilst others choose not to, and I think it's really individual, and obviously there's that financial pressure as well, so it's going to be different for everyone from that perspective. And I think with financial support, it can be really, really complicated, really, really confusing to work out what you might be eligible for. Macmillan have really good resources. Although they've reduced their benefits advice, they still do have benefits advisors, so definitely still worth contacting if you do want to talk that through in a bit more detail with anyone. But often hospitals will have local links, so sometimes they'll have Macmillan advisors, sometimes it'll be through Citizens Advice Bureau, so it's a really complicated thing to navigate if to find out what you're entitled to financially. So find out what's around locally for you, because it's variable from area to area. But Macmillan's still a really good resource for that side of things as well.
Yeah, and I think, anybody that's got a secondary breast cancer diagnosis, it would be worth just having a chat, even if you are working.
Yeah.
It's just knowing what is out there. Should the circumstances change, should you decide that, work is too overwhelming, it's too difficult, it's not practical, that you need to sort of retire, if you like, on medical grounds. There are a lot of people out there that can give you some financial advice before you make that move of leaving work, never mind the going back to work, and thinking out things like phased return in order to help you sort of taste going back to work, seeing how that feels, leaving the door open and not committing to sort of going back day, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, building up quite quickly, because you're not going to know how that feels. So loads of good advice out there, and just thinking about what you need and how to take that step by step, really, so that you can succeed in going back to work and being the person that you are at work and great at your work, and not the person that is just known for not being around because you're on treatment for cancer, for secondary breast cancer. And an awful lot of people want to be doing the types of things that they've always done, and put the cancer normality, so that they can put that aside for some time and be doing those things as well, just as the other things that we've talked about, holidays, etc. Spa things come up as well. We think about health and well-being, so I suppose complementary therapies come up. That's what made me think about it, really. Lots of cancer information centres do offer complementary therapies, so free complementary therapies, so many maybe. So it's always worth asking your local hospital and their cancer information centre if they have got that facility, or they know where people could be signposted to access that. Quite a lot of those services do ask for a letter from the oncologist, whoever you're under, to be able to say, it's okay for them to be able to have this or this, so relaxation, maybe some massage that comes up. We'll talk about that in a moment. But head massage, reflexology, aromatherapy, anything that just makes you have time for yourself and concentrate on yourself is great. And I suppose what I do want to say at the same time is those complementary therapies, and I suppose supplements and herbal therapies and things like that come into that as well. Yeah, we want to make sure they go alongside to complement that traditional treatment, that medical treatment. Often people think about complementary therapies as being alternative therapies, and alternative therapies really are exactly that. They are things that are suggested to you in preference to, or instead of the medical treatment that you're being offered. And we need to ask people to be incredibly careful about alternative therapies. You will often see people posting about those, including on breast cancer now, some of the threads, wherever you find that information, if you think this doesn't sound quite right, it probably isn't. And please ask your teams, or just give us a call. If you don't want to trouble your teams, please give us a call at Breast Cancer Now to check that out. But complementary therapies are good. All of those sort of relaxation things, all of that type of thing is good. If you want to go out and find them elsewhere, then people just need to check out the therapist that they're using. And sometimes therapists will also say that they would quite like a letter from the oncologist to say, yes, it's safe for this person to undergo that. And spas, we all love going to spas. A lot of us love going to spas, for that relaxation. These days, I think more people are going than ever, and it can be really disappointing to turn up and be told, because you've had to fill in that medical form, you've said you've got a cancer diagnosis, that you can't have this, that and the other. So I did find something. I think if you Google, there are places and companies these days that will give and make sure that they've got therapists who are used to sort of delivering spa type treatments to people with cancer. But again, check out with your team, just say, I'm going along, can I have a letter? These are the sorts of things that I'm interested in. Things like facials and foot massage and all of those things should be absolutely fine. I know that there is an issue with regards to massage, and deep tissue massage particularly, if people have had surgery, they've got lymphedema, those sorts of things. But talking to your team will help clarify the fact that they're happy for you to sort of advise you to stay away from particular things. Hot tubs, sauna room, steam rooms, all that with temperature. You can read about that and information in our lymphedema information and risk of reducing your risk of lymphedema as well. So we could probably be able to pop some links to that information as well. We're keeping Kev, who's behind the
Yeah.
scenes today, really busy with the links, I've just realised. We have got another question from Sophie. I'm hoping to find work after my radiotherapy finishes in August. I'm worried about how to mention about my treatment in an interview. I think if you look on the information that we've got, there is information about finding a new job, she says, thinking, I hope I'm right on that. But I think that working with cancer would help you with that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you're legally obliged to actually disclose your medical details so that you cannot be judged on what's going on for you.
Yeah.
All right, Sophie. I'm not quite sure when you're saying that you've got radiotherapy finishes in August, whether that is secondary breast cancer or whether that's early breast cancer that you're having your radiotherapy for. But nevertheless, I think I would seek some help with just about how to go about that application process, what you're obliged to share, what you're not, what you're not required to share, and if needs be, just drop us a line or have a phone call, and we can search around. But working with cancer will definitely give you that type of information and some sort of coaching and a little bit of encouragement really as to how to do that. You can't, as anybody, whether you've got early breast cancer or secondary breast cancer, be discriminated against. Although you may not feel disabled because of your diagnosis, you come under the sort of the Disability Act, and so you cannot be judged, or you should not be judged from a legal perspective on that diagnosis as to your competencies and what. So plenty of people do with a secondary breast cancer diagnosis and early breast cancer diagnosis go out and find themselves new work, new employment. I was speaking to somebody recently who's done that, but it's just having the confidence and knowing what you can and can't do. So yes, Sophie, it'd be great for you to get some support around that, so you feel far more confident in doing that.
And I think, as you say, I would, from sort of my knowledge and experience, it wouldn't be something at interview that you would have to disclose, because it's often, at the point where you're offered the job, that they need a bit more detail about medical history and things like that. But unless you particularly, feel like you want to, I wouldn't have thought it would be necessary. And as Catherine said, legally you can't be discriminated against for that. But yeah, I appreciate your anxiety.
Yeah, and the support is also just thinking about filling application forms, is answering. Maybe sometimes there is, although they shouldn't specifically ask you about medical background, sometimes what we do ask with any employment is about breaks in employment and what people have done.
That's
so
true,
there is, again, another Facebook Live, which I think should be on that YouTube channel. We've had a couple of sessions in the past about work and primary breast cancer, so going back to work after primary breast cancer, and there is also one about work and secondary breast cancer as well. That was with Maggie from working with cancer. So have a look at those to see if that can give you anything, but also with the resources that we can signpost you to. The working with cancer, I think, would be a great sort of opportunity for you to find a bit of confidence and support in returning to work. And we wish you well in finding a new job, Sophie.
Definitely.
So okay,
I think we probably covered most of the things that commonly come up. I don't know if there was anything else, Catherine, that we've
no, I don't think so.
Of.
I'm sure there are things out there that people ask
definitely.
about. I suppose just to return to the fact that you can find absolutely anything on the internet these days, and with the advent of AI, then artificial intelligence, that is, then quite often people do put something in, they have a quick Google, and the AI brings them up. I would absolutely encourage you, if you are listening to us tonight and thinking, I can Google these things, to skip past the AI, read it, skip past the AI and look at the trusted sources underneath, where you will get far more information. AI pulls together a bit of everything from everywhere, so we want to know that you're getting information that is trustworthy, that is from the UK, and that you can take back to your treatment team and say, I've seen this I want to ask you about this type thing. If you're unsure, then give us a call. But our own Breast Cancer Now information, Macmillan, Cancer Research UK, they will all come underneath that AI bit, and it's really important that we let sort of of encourage people to say and be a little bit curious and go, where's that come from then? Where's that link from? Who are they? Quite often, particularly with things like alternative treatments and therapies, then they purport to have an awful lot of research about it, but they don't really tell you about it. There's a lack of resources and references and that sort of thing. So be suspicious, I suppose is the word, and ask your team or ask us. It's never a problem for you to call us or to contact us to ask and say, what do you think about this? But yeah, with the advent of AI, I think that's a new thing that we have to get in our heads and just encourage people to get past that first little bit of AI and go down and have a look at our information, or Cancer Research UK or Macmillan, or if you're watching this with any other type of cancer, you know, the UK based cancer websites are relative to are specific to the type of cancer that you've got. So we have got another question. Do you want to go through that one?
So it's just popped up. So Marion says, I've had triple negative breast cancer in 2017, followed by lumpectomy at the end of 2023. I had a positive biopsy in the scar of my lumpectomy, followed by a mastectomy. Is this classed as secondary breast cancer? So yeah, this is always very confusing. We get this quite a lot, don't we, Catherine? Come up.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think the first thing to say, Marion, is secondary breast cancer is one type of recurrence, so breast cancer that has come back. As I said right at the beginning, and maybe people have missed that, secondary breast cancer is breast cancer that started in the breast but has spread from beyond the breast and the lymph nodes underneath the arm to other organs, so bone, liver, lung, brain, typically, sometimes around the abdomen for some people, other places as well, but typically those sorts of areas. It can go to the skin as well, but by the sounds of things, there are another two types of recurrence. One is local recurrence, so that's when the breast cancer has come back in the local area where it originated from. What you're describing, Marion, sounds like that. It may well be that you had a CT scan, I would imagine, just to make sure that there wasn't anything anywhere else. That's quite a common thing, a standard thing to be done. So if it's in the biopsy of your scar and it was in your scar and only in your scar, then that would be what would be deemed a local recurrence. The middle one is what we call regional. Sometimes people call it locally advanced, and that means it's gone a little bit further from the breast and not underneath the arm, maybe to the lymph nodes and underneath the collarbone, etc. But there is some sort of discrepancy as to when people say that's locally advanced or whether it's secondary breast cancer. And I think, those conversations with teams, it's always really important to highlight exactly what they're thinking and how they're treating you, and the type of treatment they're going to give you, whether that is with an intent to hopefully cure you, with a curative intent, as much as we can't say to people that they will be cured, or whether it is to keep the cancer under control, which is what happens in secondary breast cancer. You are hoping to treat people, and we know we can treat people and treat an awful lot of people really successfully, as you've said, for longer periods of times these days. Sadly, not everybody. But if you've got questions about this, Marion, and you want a clarification on exactly what's happened with you, then your treatment team obviously have far more information than we do to be able. But from what you're describing, it sounds as though it's local recurrence as well.
And I was just thinking it's really confusing as well, because there's lots of different terminology, isn't there? So obviously we use secondary breast cancer, but you can also hear it called metastatic or stage 4 or advanced. So it's really complicated and really confusing. But yeah, as Catherine said, a lot of it is around what the intent of the treatment is. And it sounds like, if they've operated and done a mastectomy, then the intent is to cure, and it wouldn't be classed as a secondary breast cancer. But yeah, again, without sort of knowing the ins and outs of everything, best place to just double check that with your team.
Yeah, definitely. And so treatment teams are there to answer questions about treatment, and we're here to answer questions about treatment and give you support and information around that. Our Living with Secondary Breast Cancer service is, I think we're up to about 50 in person. So if you don't know where they are, drop us a line or give us a call and we'll find out where your nearest one is. I'll put you through to our services teams, they will tell you. But we also have lots of online services as well. We've got about 6 I think, online groups that meet per month, and we've got a new one coming online at the beginning of next month, which will be in the evening. So traditionally they've been through the day, but we've already said this evening that people are working. Some people won't have the opportunity to come along to those groups. They're all facilitated by a trained therapist, so you get that facilitated discussion. Everybody is included, and everybody is looked after and kept an eye on. So that's the support chat type thing that is in person and also online. And I think we've got an All Scotland one going on as well online.
Yep.
So if you're watching from Scotland, you might want to know about that. But we also have that information, those information sessions. We've mentioned Caroline Tweedy, who's coming at the beginning of July. So yeah, going back to Julie and her her question about exercise, was absolutely thoroughly recommend watching Caroline. What else have we got on there? I think we do have some stuff about talking to children, and the lovely Chrissy Duff talking about memory boxes. Some people do want to think about doing that. What else is there?
There is one in August, which is not actually on the website, but hopefully will be soon, 11th of August, and it's actually at 11 a.m. So it's a daytime session around healthy eating with secondary breast cancer. So
okay, so
again,
that fits perfectly
with what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But
So
that should go up on the website soon.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll be confirmed and it'll go up on the website soon. I hope they don't tell us off for saying it too early. We will get our fingers wrapped,
in trouble.
Katie. But it fit right in for this evening, didn't it? For that, and just keep an eye on. If you go onto our website and have a look at Speakers Live, and it'll come up with secondary. Should come up with secondary at the end. We've got 2 sets of Speakers Lives. So if you're watching and you've got early breast cancer, primary breast cancer, there are Speakers Lives for those people with early or primary breast cancer, and there's a set of Speakers Lives for secondary breast cancer, often about health and well-being, quite a bit about treatment. I think we've had something about triple negative secondary breast cancer, which is triple negative. Quite recently we've had something on HER2 positive secondary breast cancer, and in September we've got a Speakers Live coming up, can't remember the date, on hormone positive secondary breast cancer as well. But a few creative things coming in there as well. So all of these things, we've got the information side of things, but the other things and the creative and the health and well-being are definitely worth keeping an eye out, as well as our Younger Women with Secondaries Together sessions as well. So keep an eye out on the website for that. But if you're wanting to know what's coming up, what you can access, then just give us a shout. So
definitely,
we've had a good 45 minutes worth of chat. Hope that's been useful to everybody out there. No, we haven't had lots of questions, but if you've got questions and you're watching this a little bit later, then do pop them in the chat and we can always respond to them. If there's anything that's come through that wasn't on topic today, we're not going to ignore you. Whether you've asked about recurrence or you've asked about something else, then I'll take some time tomorrow to pop you an answer. So have a look out for that, and I'll definitely be doing that sometime tomorrow. So by the end of tomorrow, you'll have a written response to that as well. But thanks to Julie and Sophie and Marion for asking their questions, and thanks to you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to let you get on and get on with your evening. I know it was a bit of a journey home this evening. I think we're all ready to sort of chill out and just have a little bit of time for our own well-being this evening. So all right.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
I should say a quick plug. Sorry about the survey.
Yes, I just thought of that.
Yeah, I did. Gave all that information and forgot to get a survey out. So do have a look for the link in the survey. Link for the survey in the box underneath there. And please do give us your ideas, and especially for those around secondary breast cancer as well. We'll do our best to answer your questions or get an expert in to come and discuss that with us. So but for now, good night, everybody.
Have a good evening. Bye.
All right, bye.